In the depths of space, where silence reigns supreme and stars whisper ancient secrets, lies a truth that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. Be available. For millions of years, the most advanced alien species have shared a single terrifying prophecy, a warning carved into the quantum fabric of reality itself by being so ancient that even their memory has been forgotten. A race born from a dying world, forged in violence and blessed with an unbreakable spirit. They would emerge from the darkness between stars, not as conquerors seeking territory or resources, but as something far more dangerous. When humanity finally reached the stars, every advanced civilization held its breath. The galaxy's oldest minds recognized the signs immediately. Earth's children bore the exact characteristics foretold in the ancient warnings, but the prophecy was incomplete. Bowls, it spoke of humanity's arrival, their unbreakable nature, and the chaos they would bring to established order. What it never mentioned was whether they would be salvation or damnation for the galaxy itself. Story of how the universe learned to fear a single, simple word: human. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the first time in 3,000 years. In the vast crystalline chamber that orbited the ancient star system of Vithara, representatives from 47 different species sat in stunned silence. The holographic display before them showed a small blue planet on the outer rim of an unremarkable spiral galaxy. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Dominion stood on trembling legs, his usually pristine silver robes disheveled from days of sleepless research. His telepathic tendrils flickered with barely controlled anxiety as he addressed the assembly. "Fellow counselors," his mental voice carried across the chamber, "the prophecy has begun to manifest. The species we have feared for over 4 million years has finally achieved faster-than-light travel." A ripple of unease passed through the gathering. The Vorthan representative, a massive creature resembling a walking mountain of living crystal, pulsed with deep red light, the equivalent of nervous laughter among their kind. "Surely you jest, Kethvar. The humans are barely beyond their planetary infancy. Our scouts report they've only just developed crude fusion drives." "That was 6 months ago," Kethvar replied, his mental tone grave. "This morning, our deep space monitoring station at Kepler 442 detected an impossible energy signature. Ewing, a human vessel, traveling at velocities that should tear apart any physical matter, emerged from what they're calling a jump point just outside our sensor grid. Dozens of different communication methods filled the space: telepathic bursts, harmonic frequencies, bioluminescent flashes, and chemical releases creating a symphony of panic. "Show us," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of eons. The central hologram shifted, displaying the recorded sensor data. A sleek vessel, no larger than a Zephyrian courier ship, materialized in empty space with a brilliant flash of exotic radiation. The whole design was unlike anything in the galactic database: angular, aggressive, and somehow predatory despite its relatively small size. "How?" whispered Counselor Yohara of the Peaceful Collective. "Our most advanced physicists have been studying faster-than-light travel for millennia. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for a species that hasn't even unified their homeworld." Bued, "That's not the worst part. The vessel's whole composition includes materials that shouldn't exist. Our analysis suggests they've somehow weaponized dark matter and incorporated it into their ship's very structure. They're not just breaking the laws of physics, they're rewriting them." The Vorthan representative's crystal form pulsed yellow with skepticism. "You're suggesting these humans have accomplished in decades what we haven't managed in thousands of years? Impossible. Is it?" The voice belonged to Archive Keeper Nexus, the cybernetic consciousness that maintained the galaxy's collective memory banks. "I've been analyzing the ancient texts since this session began. The amount of characteristics of the final species. Let me refresh your memory. The chamber's walls came alive with flowing script in hundreds of languages, all translating the same ancient warning: from the cradle of fire and stone they shall emerge, born of a world that dies, yet living still. They shall know no master, accept no defeat, and bow to neither god nor devil. Their ships shall swim through the dark between stars as easily as fish through water. They shall make weapons of elements that exist only in thought, and turn their very weakness into unstoppable strength. A heavy silence followed the recitation. Many counselors had heard these words before, but in the context of theoretical discussion or historical study. Seeing them applied to reality was terrifying. The human's homeworld is indeed dying, Kethvar continued. Our atmospheric analysis shows they've poisoned their own air and water, yet they continue to thrive. They've experienced multiple extinction-level events in their history, yet their population continues to grow. They've divided themselves into hundreds of conflicting nations, yet somehow coordinate space exploration efforts. Express us, prophecy. Counselor Yahara's crystalline features shifted to express concern. But the prophecy also speaks of the final species bringing either salvation or destruction to the galaxy. How do we determine which they represent? The most choice. We either meet them on our terms, or they will inevitably meet us on theirs. Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel ESS Endeavour, Captain Sarah Chen was having problems of her own. The experimental faster-than-light drive had worked perfectly, transporting her small crew across 27 light-years in a matter of hours. The problem was what they'd found at their destination. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the sensor station, "we're being scanned by at least 12 different sources. The energy signatures suggest technology centuries ahead of anything in our database." Chen studied the tactical display with growing unease. They detected the massive space station almost immediately upon arrival, but had assumed it was abandoned. The structure was too large to be the product of any single species, and its design suggested construction over thousands of years by multiple civilizations. "Communications? Any response to our hails?" "Nothing on standard frequencies, ma'am, but I'm detecting some kind of directed energy beam aimed at our vessel. Not weapons grade, but definitely active scanning." "Sir," interrupted the ship's AI, "Athena, I'm analyzing the scan patterns. The technology appears to be attempting some form of direct neural interface. Recommend extreme caution." Will. Chen's training kicked in. First contact protocols were clear, but this situation was unprecedented. They'd expected to find ruins or basic civilizations, not what appeared to be a thriving galactic community. "All stations, yellow alert. Park, prepare the universal greeting protocol." "Rodriguez, keep all weapons systems powered down but ready. If these beings are as advanced as they appear, our weapons wouldn't help us anyway." As the human vessel slowly approached the Galactic Council station, both sides prepared for what would become the most significant moment in galactic history. Neither fully understood the magnitude of what was about to unfold. On the Council station, Kethvar watched the approaching human ship with a mixture of fascination and dread. The vessel moved with a confidence that spoke of vast experience in space travel, despite the fact that humans had only achieved interstellar flight within the last few days. Its course was precise, its approach vector optimal, and its energy signature remained stable despite using technology that should have been impossible. "They're hailing us," announced the station's communications AI. "The signal is primitive by our standards, but they're using mathematical constants as a basis for establishing communication protocols. Quite clever, actually." High Arbiter Molinex nodded slowly. "Respond with the standard first contact package, but maintain all defensive systems at ready status. If the prophecy is accurate, these humans may be friendly, but they are certainly dangerous." The first exchange of information between humanity and the galaxy's established powers began with simple mathematical proofs and progressed quickly to basic linguistic frameworks. To everyone's surprise, the humans adapted to new communication methods with startling speed. Within hours, Captain Chen found herself in direct communication with the Galactic Council. Bapery, conducted through an advanced translation matrix that converted thoughts into understandable concepts, began cordially enough. "Greetings, human vessel," came the mental voice of Kethvar. "We represent the Galactic Council, a coalition of 47 species dedicated to maintaining peace and order throughout this region of space. Your arrival was anticipated. Anticipated? We had no idea anyone else was out here. You as better as the U.S. people. A pause that seemed to carry weight across the communication link. Yes, we know. Captain Chen, would you be willing to meet with our representatives? There are certain historical matters we need to discuss with your species. The request was polite, but Chen could sense an undercurrent of urgency that the translation matrix couldn't quite hide. I'm authorized to conduct first contact negotiations. Where would you like to meet? We'll prepare a docking bay suitable for your vessel. Be aware that our station maintains atmospheric conditions suitable for 47 different species. The environment may seem unusual. An hour later, Captain Chen and her small diplomatic team stepped off their shuttle into what could only be described as the most impossibly diverse environment any human had ever seen. The docking bay was a vast space filled with dozens of different atmospheric zones, each maintained by force field technology that allowed beings requiring radically different environments to coexist in the same area. She watched in amazement as a creature that appeared to be made of living plasma conversed with something resembling a mobile plant, while nearby, beings that looked like metallic spiders tended to equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. "Captain Chen," a voice called out, and she turned to see what was obviously an artificial being approaching. "I am Interface Unit 7, assigned to facilitate communication during your visit. Please, follow me." The walk through the station revealed technology and architecture on a scale that dwarfed human imagination. Corridors stretched for kilometers, filled with beings from species that seemed to have evolved on worlds with completely different physical laws. Yet everything functioned with perfect harmony. "How long has this station existed?" Chen asked, trying to process what she was seeing. "The oldest sections date back approximately 3.7 million years, Interface Unit 7 replied matter-of-factly, but modified by each new species that joins the Council. Chen's breath caught as she realized she was looking at the representatives of civilizations that had been exploring space since before humans had evolved. High Arbiter Molinex stood at the center of the assembly, her ancient features composed despite the gravity of the moment. "Captain Chen, welcome to the Galactic Council. We have much to discuss." "Thank you for the welcome," Chen replied, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I have to admit we had no idea we were walking into such an established galactic community. Your species was under observation until you achieved faster-than-light travel. We needed to see how you would develop without outside influence." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Observation? For how long?" "Since your species first demonstrated agriculture," Molinex replied calmly, "expected approximately 12,000 of your years. We've been waiting to see if you would fulfill certain predictions." The revelation that humanity had been watched for their entire civilization was staggering, but Chen forced herself to focus. "What predictions?" Archive Keeper Nexus materialized a holographic display showing the ancient prophecy. This text was left by a species so ancient that we have no record of them beyond these warnings. They apparently had the ability to see potential futures, and they left very specific information about your kind. As Chen read the translated text, her expression grew increasingly grave. The descriptions were unnervingly accurate, detailing not just humanity's technological development but their fundamental characteristics as a species. "You're saying that some ancient aliens predicted humanity would develop faster than light travel? The prophecy speaks of your species as either the salvation or destruction of galactic civilization. We convened this session to determine which you represent." Will Chen looked around the chamber at the assembled alien representatives, each representing civilizations with thousands or millions of years of history. The weight of their collective gaze was almost overwhelming. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said carefully. "Humanity isn't looking to either save or destroy anyone. We just want to explore, to learn, to find our place among the stars." The Vorthan representative pulsed with what Chen was learning to recognize as their equivalent of laughter. That desire for exploration and learning, that's exactly what the prophecy predicted you would say. 3 days into the first contact negotiations, Captain Chen had learned more about galactic civilization than humanity had discovered about their own planet in centuries. The Galactic Council's archives contain the history of thousands of species, detailed maps of inhabited systems across 3 spiral arms, and technological databases that made human science look like children playing with sticks. What disturbed her most, however, were the subtle tests she was beginning to recognize in every interaction. "Captain," Kethvar's mental voice carried a note of casual curiosity as they toured the station's cultural exchange centers. "Most civilizations that achieve faster-than-light travel have already unified their homeworld. Yet humans remain divided into competing nations. How do you explain this contradiction?" Chen had fielded variations of this question dozens of times over the past few days. Diversity of thought leads to innovation. Our different perspectives drive us to find creative solutions, even when those perspectives lead to warfare. The question hung in the air like a challenge. National and national events? Chen could feel the attention of their escorts, Interface Unit 7, and several other council representatives who had supposedly joined them for casual observation. "Especially then," she replied firmly. "Conflict teaches us resilience, forces us to adapt, and ultimately makes us stronger. We've learned from our mistakes." Kethvar's tendrils flickered with what she'd learned was surprise. "You view warfare as beneficial?" "I view it as inevitable," Chen corrected. "In any species complex enough for sapience will have internal conflicts. The key is learning to channel that drive toward productive ends. Humans didn't stop fighting because we became enlightened. We redirected our competitive nature toward exploration and discovery." The response seemed to satisfy something in Kethvar's evaluation, though Chen wasn't sure what. They continued the tour, but she remained alert for the next test. It came from an unexpected source. While examining a display of Vorthan crystalline art, her communications officer's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Captain, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple vessels approaching the station. Their energy signatures don't match any council species in the database." Chen excused herself and hurried back to her shuttle, where she found her crew in a state of controlled tension. The tactical display showed 7 ships of unknown configuration approaching from the outer system. "Will, analysis?" she asked quickly. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked grim. "They're armed, Captain. Heavy weapons, and their approach vector suggests hostile intent. The council station hasn't altered its defensive posture, which either means they're not concerned or they're not aware of the threat." "Sir," interrupted Athena, "I'm detecting communication between the approaching vessels and the council station. They're demanding something called Tribute Collection Gem." Chen felt pieces clicking into place. "Pirates? Or protection racket," Rodriguez confirmed. "The council is broadcasting to all vessels to remain calm and comply with inspection protocols." They were clearly predators, designed for intimidation and combat rather than exploration or trade. "Captain," Interface Unit 7's voice came through the communication system. "The council requests that all visiting vessels remain docked during the current administrative procedure." Chen made a decision that would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy. Instead of following the council's instructions, she activated her ship's combat systems. "Rodriguez, bring us to yellow alert. Park, open a channel to the council." "Captain," Interface Unit 7's voice carried a note of urgency, "your vessel's weapons systems are activating. It is not advisable during tribute collection procedures." "With respect," Chen replied, "where I come from, we have a different approach to pirates." Down from the station with smooth precision, its fusion drive carrying it toward the perimeter, where the unknown vessels were positioning themselves. The move was so unexpected that several council representatives immediately contacted Chen's shuttle. "Captain Chen," Kethvar's mental voice was tight with concern, "you don't understand the situation. The Devourers are a recognized factor in this region. Resistance only leads to greater losses." "The Devourers?" Chen asked, keeping her eyes on the tactical display as her ship maneuvered. "A species that feeds on energy. They sustain themselves by consuming the power cores of other vessels. The Council has negotiated a tribute arrangement that minimizes casualties." Chen felt disgust rise in her throat. "You pay them protection money? We preserve lives and maintain order through practical accommodation." On the bridge of the ESS Endeavor, The crew watched their captain's expression harden. They'd served with her long enough to recognize the look that meant someone was about to learn why humans had survived everything their hostile homeworld could throw at them. Athena, open a channel to the lead Devourer vessel. Channel open, Captain. Chen's voice carried across space with the authority of someone who had never learned to surrender. Devourer vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Endeavor. And you are threatening a peaceful station and demanding tribute from civilians. I'm giving you one chance to withdraw from this system. The response came in a burst of harmonic frequencies that the translation matrix struggled to process. When it finally resolved into understandable words, the message was simple. Small flesh creature, your ship's energy will feed us well. Prepare for consumption. So that's how it's going to be, Chen muttered. Rodriguez, all weapons free. Target the lead vessel's engine section. What happened next became legend in both human and galactic history. The ESS Endeavor, a small exploration vessel with minimal armaments, engaged 7 Devourer ships in direct combat. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Human weapon design philosophy had been shaped by centuries of warfare against other humans, leading to innovations that prioritized efficiency and adaptability. The Endeavor's plasma cannons used magnetic containment technology originally developed for fusion reactors, creating weapons that could adjust their output and focus in real time. The Devourers had grown complacent through millennia of facing species that considered combat a last resort. Their ships were designed for intimidation and energy extraction, not actual warfare. They had never encountered a species that approached conflict with systematic aggression. The human ship moved through space like a predator, using momentum and precise targeting to disable each Devourer vessel in turn. Instead of attempting to destroy them outright, Chen's crew systematically eliminated their weapons and propulsion, leaving them helpless but alive. All Devourer vessels are disabled, Captain, Rodriguez reported. No casualties on either side. Open a channel. Chen's voice carried across the battlefield with calm authority. Devourer fleet, your vessels are disabled but intact. You have 2 choices. Withdraw from this system immediately, or explain to your superiors how a single human ship neutralized your entire squadron. I suggest you choose quickly, before I lose patience. The Devourer response came swiftly. Distress beacons activated as the disabled ships called for rescue. Within minutes, they were retreating on minimal power, their energy harvesting mission abandoned. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the council station, representatives from 47 species tried to process what they had just witnessed. A single ship from a species that had achieved spaceflight less than a century ago had effortlessly defeated a threat that had plagued the galaxy for thousands of years. Change. High Arbiter Molinex's voice carried across the communication channel. Please return to the station. We need to discuss what just occurred. An hour later, Chen found herself once again facing the assembled Galactic Council. But the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Where before she had sensed cautious evaluation, now she felt something approaching awe mixed with fear. Captain, Molinex began carefully, your actions today were not entirely unexpected. Chen raised an eyebrow. Another test? The final test? Kefar confirmed. The ancient prophecy was quite specific about how the final species would react to predators. It stated they would refuse to feed the darkness, choosing instead to drive it back into the void from whence it came. Bleed. You set this up? Chen's voice carried a dangerous edge that made several council members step back involuntarily. We allowed it to proceed when we could have prevented it, Molinex admitted. The Devourers do periodically demand tribute, but we have defensive measures that could have deterred them. We needed to see how humanity would respond to an immoral but practical solution to conflict. Chen looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, seeing them in a new light. And how did we do? The text reads, They shall know neither compromise with evil nor accommodation of oppression. Where others seek the path of least resistance, they shall choose the path of greatest righteousness. Their strength shall not be in their weapons or their numbers, but in their refusal to accept defeat when defending others. The words hung in the air like a judgment. Chen realized that everything that had happened since their arrival had been orchestrated to determine whether humanity would fulfill the prophecy's predictions. "So what's the verdict?" she asked. Molinex exchanged glances with her fellow council members before responding. "The prophecy also states that the final species will either usher in a new golden age of galactic civilization or destroy everything we have built. Today's events suggest you are indeed the species foretold, but we still don't know which outcome you represent." "Perhaps," said Counselor Yuhara thoughtfully, "that depends on how we treat them." The Galactic Council faced a species that was both their potential salvation and their possible destruction. "Captain Chen," Molinex said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend an invitation for humanity to join our alliance. However, we must also inform you that this invitation comes with certain expectations and responsibilities, such as, or you will replace us entirely. We would prefer the former. Joining an established galactic government would provide humanity with access to technology and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But it would also place them under the authority of species that had just demonstrated they were willing to use deception and manipulation to test newcomers. I'll need to consult with my government," she said finally. "But I can tell you that humans value honesty and direct communication. If we're going to work together, the testing stops here." "Bat." Kethvar's tendrils flickered with what might have been amusement. "Captain, the prophecy suggests that humanity's real tests haven't even begun yet." As Captain Chen prepared to return to Earth with news that would fundamentally change human civilization forever, neither she nor the council representatives could have imagined the events that would soon unfold. The ancient prophecy had proven accurate so far, but its most disturbing predictions still lay ahead. In the depths of space, monitoring stations that hadn't transmitted in millions of years suddenly came online, sending automated signals toward the galactic core. B had triggered ancient protocols, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, something that had slumbered for eons began to stir. The galaxy's first contact with humanity was complete, but their story was just beginning. They ate both salvation and destruction, and events were already in motion that would determine which future would come to pass. Captain Chen's ship jumped back toward Earth, carrying with her the coordinates of a galactic civilization that spanned thousands of worlds, and the weight of expectations that could either elevate humanity to heights beyond imagination to save. Behind her, the Council convened emergency sessions to prepare for changes they couldn't yet comprehend, while in the deepest archives of their collective memory, warnings about the final species that even the prophecy hadn't mentioned began to surface. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether humanity would prove to be its salvation or its doom. 6 months after first contact, Earth buzzed with activity unlike anything in human history. The revelation that humanity wasn't alone in the universe had initially caused panic, then wonder, and finally a unified determination that surprised even the humans themselves. The United Nations had transformed overnight from a diplomatic forum into a functioning world government, driven by the simple necessity of presenting a unified face to galactic civilization. Old rivalries hadn't disappeared. Admiral Chen, promoted after her successful first contact mission, stood in the bridge of Earth's first proper starship, the ESS Unity, built using a combination of human engineering and carefully shared council technology. It represented the best of both civilizations. "Admiral," called Commander Torres from the science station, "we're receiving priority transmission from the council station. It's marked urgent." This ancient features twisted. "With concern, Admiral Chen, we need humanity's assistance immediately. Something has awakened in the galactic core, and our deep space monitoring stations are detecting energy signatures we haven't seen in 4 million years. "What kind of energy signatures?" "The kind associated with the species that left the prophecy," Kethvar's mental voice added as he appeared in the transmission. "We believe your arrival has triggered some sort of automated response from whatever remains of their civilization." Black. If the ancient species that had predicted humanity's arrival was still active in some form, it raised questions that no one in the galaxy was prepared to answer. "We're en route to your position," Chen confirmed, estimating arrival in 18 hours. As the Unity jumped toward the council station, similar scenes were playing out across human space. The SS Defiance was escorting a convoy of scientists toward the edge of Council territory, while the SS Horizon investigated reports of ancient structures suddenly powering up in previously dead systems. Humanity's response to the galactic crisis was typically human. They threw everything they had at the problem, regardless of the risks. When Admiral Chen arrived at the Council station, she found it in a state of barely controlled chaos. And species crowded the docking bays, and the communication networks buzzed with reports from across the galaxy. "Admiral," Interface Unit 7 greeted her as she disembarked. "The situation has deteriorated since our last communication. We've lost contact with 3 entire star systems, and the energy readings from the galactic core continue to intensify." The calm, orderly atmosphere she remembered from her first visit had been replaced by something approaching panic. In the main assembly chamber, she found the Galactic Council in emergency session. Representatives argued in dozens of languages, while holographic displays showed star charts covered with ominous red markers. "Admiral Chen," Molinex called out as she entered, "thank you for responding so quickly. We've compiled everything we know about the current crisis." The central display shifted to show the galaxy from above, with pulsing lights indicating the locations of ancient installations that had suddenly activated. The pattern was unmistakable, a vast network spreading outward from the galactic core. "These structures have been dormant for longer than our recorded history," explained Archive Keeper Nexus. "Now they're all coming online simultaneously, and they're scanning for something." "Scanning for what?" Chen asked. "We believe they're looking for you," Kethvar replied grimly. "More specifically, they're looking for any species that matches the characteristics described in the prophecy." Chen studied the display with growing unease. The network of ancient stations formed a pattern that would eventually encompass the entire galaxy if allowed to continue expanding. "What happens when they find us?" "We don't know," Molinex admitted. The prophecy spoke of humanity as either salvation or destruction, but it never explained how that determination would be made. Before Chen could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The main display shifted to show long-range sensors detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of the galactic core. "Unknown vessels detected," announced the station's AI. "Configuration and technology unknown. Estimated time to arrival, 6 hours." The Monarch, after 4 million years, the creators of the prophecy were apparently returning. "All Council fleets are ordered to fall back to defensive positions," Molinex commanded. "We cannot risk losing our ships to unknown technology." Chen found herself speaking before she'd consciously decided to do so. "With respect, High Arbiter, running away isn't going to solve this problem." "Admiral, you cannot seriously be suggesting we engage these entities directly. Their technology makes ours look primitive. Then it's a good thing humans specialize in fighting opponents with superior technology," Chen replied calmly. "We've been doing it since we climbed down from the trees." "This isn't a matter of courage or determination, Admiral. We're talking about beings that were ancient when our civilizations were young." Chen turned to address the full assembly. The prophecy said humanity would either save the galaxy or destroy it. And no, maybe the test isn't whether we can fight these ancient beings, but whether we're willing to try when everyone else has given up. The suggestion sent ripples of discussion through the chamber. Several species had legends about the ancient civilization that left the prophecy, and none of those legends suggested they were hostile. But legends weren't much comfort when facing the unknown. "What do you propose?" Molly next asked finally. "We meet them halfway. Send a small fleet to intercept before they reach Council space. In reality, if they're hostile, we buy time for evacuation. If they're here to evaluate us, we show them what humanity brings to the galaxy." Found the adoption from the Devourer incident. But Chen's reputation from the Devourer incident had earned her a grudging respect. After an hour of heated debate, the Council agreed to let a joint human-Council fleet attempt contact. 3 hours later, Admiral Chen found herself commanding a force of 12 ships, representing 8 different species as they moved to intercept the approaching ancient vessels. Pay. The ESS Unity led the formation, flanked by a Zephyrian cruiser, 2 Vorthan crystal ships, and a collection of other vessels that had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. Long-range sensors are getting a better read on the incoming vessels, "Admiral, you need to see this." The tactical display showed 3 ships approaching at sublight speeds. But calling them ships was like calling a hurricane a breeze. Each vessel was the size of a moon, constructed from materials that bent light around them and powered by energy sources that registered off the scale of known physics. "My God," whispered Dr. Biamoto, the Unity xenobiologist. "How old are those things?" According to the energy signature analysis, answered Athena, the whole materials suggest construction approximately 4.2 million years ago. However, the technology has been continuously upgraded over that entire period. Chen absorbed that information with the calm that had made her Earth's premier deep space commander. "Open a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Chen to Joint Fleet. We're about to make contact with beings that are older than human civilization. Observe, we're not just representing our individual species today. We're representing the idea that younger races deserve a place in the galaxy." As the 2 fleets approached each other, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. The ancient vessels slowed to a complete stop, hanging in space like metal moons while they waited for the much smaller Council fleet to approach. "They're scanning us," reported the sensor operator on the Zephyrian cruiser. "But the scans are unlike anything in our database. It's as if they're reading our thoughts, our histories, our very souls." Then, without warning, communication came through channels that no species had ever used before. The words appeared directly in the minds of every sentient being in both fleets, translated into their native thought patterns with perfect clarity. "We are the architects, shepherds of galactic evolution, and keepers of the cosmic design. We have slept for 4 million years, waiting for the arrival of the final species. You who call yourselves human, step forward." Admiral Chen felt the weight of every gaze in the fleet as she responded. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen, representing humanity and the Galactic Council. We received your prophecy and understand you've been waiting for us." The prophecy was not ours alone. It was written by a coalition of species that reached transcendence eons ago. Analogy. We remained behind to evaluate those who would come after. Today, you face the test that will determine the future of all life in this galaxy. Age. The words carried implications that made Chen's blood run cold. What kind of test? The galaxy stands at a crossroads. The younger species have grown stagnant, comfortable with peaceful cooperation but lacking the drive for growth and exploration that marks truly advanced civilization. They have chosen safety over progress. Peace. Around her, Chen could hear the representatives of those younger species reacting to what amounted to a cosmic judgment of their entire approach to civilization. The prophecy identified humanity as the catalyst for change. You will either inspire the galaxy to reach new heights of achievement, or you will replace those who lack the will to grow. The test is simple. Prove that cooperation and growth can coexist. And if we fail, then we will remove the obstacles to progress and allow humanity to inherit the galaxy alone. This has been the pattern for millions of years. Species rise, plateau, and are replaced by those with greater potential. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. The architects weren't just evaluating humanity, they were deciding whether the current galactic civilization deserved to continue existing. How long do we have? The test has already begun. Your response to this conversation, your actions in the coming days, and your species' choices in the face of cosmic responsibility will determine the outcome. You have one galactic standard, year to prove that diversity of species and unity of purpose can coexist. And if we refuse to participate? The pause that followed carried the weight of cosmic judgment. Refusal is also a choice, Admiral Chen, but not one that preserves the current state of affairs. As the communication ended, Admiral Chen found herself facing the most important decision in human history. The architects had essentially declared that humanity was on trial to determine whether the galaxy's established civilizations would be allowed to survive. The ancient ships hung in space like metal gods, waiting to see how the newest species in the galaxy would handle the burden of cosmic responsibility. Admiral Chen stared out at the stars, knowing that every choice she made from this moment forward would determine whether humanity became the salvation the galaxy had been waiting for, or the instrument of its transformation. Behind her, representatives from dozens of species waited to learn whether they had a future among the stars, or whether they were about to become footnotes in the rise of human civilization. The test had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The galaxy itself hung in the balance, waiting to see what humans would choose when given the power to reshape the cosmic order. 1 year after the architect's ultimatum, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. What began as a test of humanity's worthiness had evolved into something far more complex and profound. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Harmony, humanity's newest and largest vessel, as it approached the rendezvous coordinates provided by the architects. Around her, a fleet unlike anything in galactic history waited in formation. Human ships flew alongside council vessels, but these weren't the same organizations that had existed a year ago. Status report, Chen called out to her mixed-species bridge crew. Commander Torres, now serving as her executive officer, consulted displays showing data from across the galaxy. The Kepler Collaborative has successfully established 3 new colonies using combined human-Zephyrian terraforming technology. The Vorthan Engineering Corps reports completion of the first hybrid, faster-than-light drives. And the Joint Scientific Institute on Proxima Station has made a breakthrough in quantum consciousness research. Each report represented something that would have been impossible under the old council system. Humanity hadn't replaced the galactic civilization, they had catalyzed it into something entirely new. "Admiral," called Dr. Goodwise. "Yamato from the science station. The architect vessels are coming into range. All 3 ships are present, but their energy signatures have changed significantly." But something was different about them. They seemed more alive, more aware than during their first encounter. The familiar voice of the architects filled the bridge, but its tone had changed. Where before there had been cosmic judgment, now there was something approaching curiosity. "Admiral Chen, you have returned as promised. We have observed the changes your species has brought to galactic civilization with great interest. Knows that Benedict has been using a province of Apollo. Step onto your observation deck, Admiral. There is much to discuss." The observation deck of the ESS Harmony provided a panoramic view of the assembled fleet. Ships from dozens of species hung in formation, but they weren't separated by species as they had been in the old council fleets. Instead, mixed crews flew hybrid vessels that combined the best technologies and philosophies from multiple civilizations. As Admiral Chen watched, the space around the architect's ships began to shimmer, and the architects, appearing in physical form for the first time in millions of years, were simultaneously more and less impressive than she had imagined. They looked humanoid, but with proportions that suggested evolution on a world with different gravity. Their skin had a crystalline quality that seemed to contain swirling galaxies, and their eyes held depths that spoke of eons of accumulated knowledge. "You are not what we expected," the lead architect said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested communication methods beyond simple speech. "Good," Chen replied. "Predictability is overrated." "Indeed. When we composed the prophecy 4 million years ago, we anticipated a species that would either conquer through force or inspire through example. We did not foresee one that would achieve both simultaneously." Around the observation deck, holographic displays materialized showing scenes from across the galaxy. Chen saw human engineers working alongside Vorthan crystal shapers to design new types of space habitats. She watched Zephyrian telepaths collaborating with human psychologists to develop new forms of interspecies communication. Everywhere, the barriers between civilizations were dissolving in favor of cooperation based on capability rather than species. "You have accomplished something we thought impossible," another architect observed. "You have taken species that had grown comfortable with limitation and inspired them to transcend those boundaries. The Zephyrians are exploring realms of thought they had declared impossible. Ardiac, the Vorthans are creating art that incorporates concepts they had never considered. Even the peaceful Yahara have begun developing technologies for exploration, rather than mere maintenance." And Chain studied the displays with pride mixed with concern. "But, rise. What you have accomplished within existing galactic civilization is impressive. The question remains whether this progress can be sustained when faced with external challenges. The observation deck's displays shifted to show something that made Chen's blood run cold. At the very edge of the galaxy, where space gave way to the intergalactic void, massive structures were moving. Ships the size of solar systems, powered by energies that dwarfed even architect technology. The devourers you encountered were refugees, the architect explained. Their homeworld was consumed by the Eternal Swarm, a civilization that exists solely to consume and convert all matter into extensions of themselves. They have devoured 3 galaxies completely and are now approaching this one. The implications were staggering. Everything humanity had accomplished, all the progress the galaxy had made, was threatened by an enemy that made the architects look primitive. "How long do we have?" Chen asked. "At their current rate of advance, the vanguard forces will reach the outer spiral arms in approximately 50 standard years, better than 2 centuries. Chen absorbed this information with the calm that had carried her through a year of impossible challenges. "What do you expect us to do about it?" "That," said the third architect, "is the final test. The galaxy faces a threat that cannot be negotiated with, accommodated, or avoided. The Eternal Swarm exists solely to consume. They cannot be reasoned with, because they have no individual consciousness, only collective hunger. Previous galactic civilizations faced with similar threats have chosen one of 3 paths," the first architect continued. "Hiding, seeking to avoid detection, until the threat passes. Or transcendence, abandoning physical form entirely." "Al, and you?" Chen asked. "What did your people choose?" "We chose a 4th option," the architect replied. "We created the prophecy and waited for a species capable of finding a 5th. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on Chen's shoulders like a familiar burden. Humanity wasn't just being tested for their own survival. They were being asked to find a solution that had eluded countless civilizations across millions of years. "You want us to fight them?" "We want you to do what humanity has always done," the architect said. "Find a solution no one else has considered." Tom turned to look out at the mixed fleet surrounding them, seeing it with new eyes. Every ship represented not just advanced technology, but a different way of thinking about problems. The combination of human adaptability, Zephyrian telepathy, Vorthan crystalline engineering will need more than good intentions and mixed crews, she said finally. "You'll need to unite not just this galaxy, but others as well. The Eternal Swarm has left survivors in the galaxies they've consumed, scattered refugees hiding in the dark spaces between stars. If they could be gathered, organized, and given hope. You're talking about building a multi-galactic alliance against an enemy that has never been defeated. We're talking about giving younger species a chance to prove they can grow beyond the limitations of their creators," the architect replied. "The Eternal Swarm represents stagnation made manifest. Pure consumption without growth or change. They are what happens when survival becomes an end in itself rather than a means to greater purpose." Chen looked out at the stars, seeing them not as distant lights, but as homes to trillions of beings who had never asked to be part of a cosmic conflict. "If we do this, if we try to build this alliance and fight this war, that the necessities of conflict won't turn us into just another consuming force?" "None," the architect admitted. "That is why this is the final test. Whether humanity can maintain its essential nature while wielding the power necessary to reshape the cosmic order. Whether you can fight monsters without becoming monsters yourselves." The silence that followed was broken by the voice of High Arbiter Molinex, transmitted from the council station. "Admiral Chen, we've been monitoring your conversation with the architects. The full council stands ready to support whatever decision humanity makes." Chen activated her communicator to address the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. You've all heard what we're facing. Baden? The question isn't whether we can win this war. It's whether we can fight it without losing everything we've built together." Responses came back in dozens of languages and communication methods, but the message was universal. The combined civilizations of the galaxy were ready to follow humanity into the unknown. "Very well," Chen said to the architects. "Well, we accept your test, But we're not doing this alone, and we're not doing it your way. Energy. We're going to do it as partners, not as humanity ruling over subject species. The lead architect smiled, an expression that transformed his ancient features into something almost human. That response is precisely why the prophecy chose your species. You understand that true strength comes not from dominion, but from unity freely given. Find, the eternal swarm will reach this galaxy in 50 years, Chen said, turning back to her fleet. That gives us exactly enough time to do the impossible. We're going to unite not just our galaxy, but every survivor from every galaxy they've consumed. We're going to build something the universe has never seen, a true coalition of free peoples fighting not just for survival, but for the right to exist and grow and explore. As the architect ships began to power up their ancient engines, preparing to join the new galactic alliance they had tested into existence, Admiral Chen realized that humanity had passed every test placed before them, and they could work with others, inspire change, and maintain their principles under pressure. Now came the real challenge, proving they could save the universe while remaining worthy of the allies who had chosen to follow them into the dark. Our eyes this salvation or destruction for galactic civilization, as Admiral Chen watched the combined fleets begin preparations for the greatest conflict in cosmic history, she realized they had chosen a third option: transformation. The galaxy that would emerge from the coming war would be neither the stagnant bureaucracy the Council had become, nor the human-dominated empire some had feared. It would be something entirely new, a civilization that combined the best qualities of every species while maintaining the drive and determination that had brought humanity to the stars. The ancient prophecy was complete. They had proven themselves worthy of cosmic responsibility. Now they would discover whether they were capable of cosmic leadership. And the fleet jumped toward Earth, carrying with them the weight of galactic destiny and the hope that sometimes, when faced with impossible odds, the newest voice in the conversation could find solutions that had eluded ancient wisdom. Behind them, space itself began to change, as architect technology awakened networks that had slumbered for millions of years. The galaxy was preparing for war, but under the leadership of a species that had learned to fight for others rather than against them. If you will, the eternal swarm was coming, but they would not find the galaxy they expected. If you will, they would find something that had never existed in their millions of years of conquest, a universe that refused to surrender, led by a species that had turned survival itself into an art form.